I'm Atira. So I set up this organization called the Art2Healing Project, and I'm here to share with you my story. My intention of telling stories, which I believe are very powerful, is really to inspire you to go out and be the change which is possible. So just as Tara mentioned before, I believe that change, the power of change is limitless and it's boundless in our lives. And so I'm here to share with you my story about how I started the Art2Healing Project. So, okay, I had to take a pause there a moment. So my journey really started when I decided that I wanted to go overseas, and I booked myself a round the world ticket, and I was working as an art therapist at a time, but I really wanted to go overseas to study dance, and I wanted to study art and music. So I bought myself a round the world ticket. I spent $4,000, and the first place that I got to was Cambodia. And I arrived in Cambodia 7 years after the war had ended, so I had never really seen poverty like that in my life before. I saw how war destroyed a country. I saw the desperation in people's eyes. I saw the mines that were, on the side of the road that no children couldn't play because if they went into the fields, they would be blown up to pieces. I saw the desolation in people's eyes, and it really moved me. The one thing that really broke my heart open and really moved something in my body, something in my heart, was the place where I was staying. There were lots of homeless families living on the street, and in the evening the mothers would doll their little girls up. They were probably about maybe 9 to 12, 14, and they would prostitute and sell their daughters into sex work. And I saw that happen, on the street in front of my eyes. And the curious person that I am, I try to engage these families in conversation, because really, before I arrived in Cambodia, I had never heard of sex trafficking before. So, I'll engage them in conversation. And what really moved me, what I still remember, is that they had this kind of lost look in their eyes, this helpless, hopeless, like no one cares for me kind of look. And I really saw that. However, through that hopelessness and helplessness, I really saw their light. I saw how when I engaged with them, there was this spark. The spark in their eyes was not dead. I saw their light in their darkness. And all I wanted to do at that time was to reflect and show them how, even though they were going through a really hard time, I could really still see their light, and I wanted to reflect that back to them. So during this time, I was in Cambodia, I was a tourist. I realized that I had two choices. Really, at the end of the day, I had two choices. The first choice was to stay, and do something about it, because I was so moved. I was crying. I was just in this kind of existential crisis, like, how can the world be like this? How can these experiences don't make sense, they don't make meaning in my world. And I realized that the other decision to go, that I had was to, really acknowledge that there was stuff like that happening in the world. I feel a little bit sad, because I was feeling really sad and distressed about what was going on. But continue on my 1-year journey, around the world, and I know with all experiences that the experience would fade and I would live my merry little life. So there were two choices. So I chose the first choice. I chose to follow that energy in my body that broke me open. So I cancelled my round the world ticket. And I stayed and I dived really, really deep in this kind of issue of sex trafficking, and really the disempowerment of humanity. So it's not really disempowerment of women, it's really disempowerment and the wounding of humanity. That humanity, can we have these things on our planet, and each of us are responsible for creating a change, for creating the life that we want to live in the world, that everyone can live in the world. Not very dissimilar from what, Tara's beautiful and moving poem described. So I realized that trafficking is a $32 billion industry in the world. So it comes third after arms, weapons, and also war, and it comes after pharmaceuticals, which is drugs. And I get this question a lot. I get this question like, isn't it really hard being in your world, working with thousands of clients who, I can tell you honestly, some of them go back to trafficking after it's because they've been so traumatized. A lot of them are sold at a very young age, so they don't really know that they have choice. With a lot of them, they are so traumatized and hooked on drugs, HIV/AIDS, that they choose to go back to sex slavery. And all the women that I have worked with, all of them, women and girls, do it for their family. See, that's the most moving thing. All my clients, when I ask them, why did you stay in this work? Why didn't you leave? Well, a lot of them get tortured and they don't have a choice to leave. But a lot of them go, I'm doing this for my family. Because, they believe that they've done some bad karma in their past life, and they have to go through this experience in order to repay back maybe the bad karma that they've done. And that this really moves me. This really moves that, a lot of these women, their parents actually sell them into slavery because they're so poor. They come from such impoverished, war-torn countries that their parents kind of sell them into slavery, and yet they're working to pay off to give money to their family. And this is their love that I experience with a lot of the clients that I work with. So I think that I'm running out of time. I would love to go on and on. I'd love to share with you one of these women's stories, but I don't think that we have time. But what I would love to leave you with is that change is always possible. I'd like to leave you one really quick story of a really amazing woman, client of mine, who was trafficked at the age of 5 in Nepal. And she was rescued. She was in India, she was in Bombay. She was rescued. She came back to Nepal, and with a group of other women who have been also experienced sex slavery, they all set up this amazing organization called Shakti Samuha. And it's the only organization in the world that is run by sex traffic survivors. When I first met Januka about 6 years ago, she couldn't speak English, so we would converse with the translator. And now she speaks perfect English, perfect. She speaks amazing English so that we don't have to work through a translator anymore. But 2 years ago, she was nominated as a constituent member in Parliament. So she sits and she, talks about policy with policymakers in Nepal about sex trafficking. And I wanted to leave you with this note because I really do believe that change is possible. We have an innate ability to transform and to give light to those that we meet and to create change and transformation in such little ways.